Se pierde la arena y el mar. Estaré soñando yo. Se ve tan tropical. Es soleta que oh shit. Oh, hi everybody. Welcome, 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 welcome. Where it's always sunny. This is the Tropical Girl Show. Everybody, hi. Here we are again together for another week of the Tropical Girl Show. I'm very excited to be here with you today. You know that I could do this forever and I just love being here talking to you, giving you information. So today we have two amazing guests. So number one, I have to share with you that those ladies are, no joke. Number two, they're, one of my best friends. Two of my best friends. And, they are, scholars, they are professionals, and they are experts of what we're going to be talking about today, which is, exoticism, identity, and whatever it means to be, tropical/exotic in a country like the U.S., right? First guest that I'd like to introduce you is Ms. Castella Copeland. Castella is... I love her. She's the other half to my heart. And she does a lot of work with youth in the town of Windsor. She also has a master's in education, and she's phenomenal. You hear her. I won't, steal you the chance from hearing directly from her as we chat. The other half to my heart has three halves, mine, Castella's, and Lauren's, I guess, is Lauren Bonilla. Lauren is from the Dominican Republic, and she does a lot of work with, sex work, identity, and she's pursuing her PhD in geography at the University of Connecticut. I met both of them at the University of Connecticut. Anyway, everybody, we have those two amazing guests, but before that, I would love to drop my two tropical cents today and share some knowledge with you. I always like to open our show with a quote and some food for thought, because you know me, I love a good chat, I love a good conversation, but I also love a good reflection, okay? So it's reflection time at the Tropical Girl Show. Ron, can we have our reflection quote for the day? Por favor, call Ron. What's poppin'?
Coming right up.
Okay. Ron? Yeah. Anyway, oh, there it is. So the quote of the day is, if you want it, and the more you keep learning, the more you keep hearing, you can have it. Just go and get it. And who said that? You know me, Cardi B. She, too, is a tropical girl. We'll talk about that later once we chat with our guests today, because I don't want to keep them waiting. But here's my 2 cents for you before we start the show. Lauren and Castella, welcome to the Tropical Girl Show. How are you, friends?
Good, how are you? Thank you for having us today in the show.
Oh my God, I like how everyone looks so pretty in patterns, right, in colors and whatnot. Is there something more exotic and tropical than that?
Right? We are tropical beings, so we're spicing it up.
I know, right? Okay, now, it's so good to have you both here. How are you today? Let's just start really light before we get into the juicy stuff. So, how are you both today? So let's hear from Castella. How are you today?
Oh, I'm pretty good, just 8 more days of school left of teaching.
Oh my goodness.
So I teach a lot of youth, and we're closing out the year, and it's just been a long journey, especially this academic year, just teaching and also being a doctoral student. But it's just been so much just kind of to take a moment and actually just reflect and be you know what, we've all come so far, and I'm just so grateful for that journey, and also to be here with you all. So thank you so much, and I can't wait to hear more about you too, Lauren.
Thank you so much. These are 3 women pursuing PhDs, everyone. Careful with what you say. Anyway, Lauren, it's your turn.
I'm doing great. Actually, I am looking forward to the show today. I just submitted my dissertation proposal this morning, so I feel excellent. Yes, and this is actually the most interaction that I've had live this week. So yeah, I'm feeling excellent. I'm feeling pumped, and I'm looking forward to discussing the topics that you have for us today.
This is so amazing. Thank you so much. Not that anybody asked, but I'm doing well today. Anyway, so crazy. Anyway, so the first thing that I wanted to talk about, this is the Tropical Girl Show, and I think that I need to tell people how this name sort of came about. So I have a little story, and then you can both chime in and, share your thoughts on it. So once upon a time, I used to go to a place uptown Manhattan where there are a lot of Dominican folks. And I was sitting and chilling with a friend of mine who, looked at me and he said, oh, you're tropical like pineapples and palm trees. And I was like, wait a second. What do you mean by tropical like pineapples and palm trees, right? What do you mean? And then I flew home not too long after, and yeah, there are a lot of pineapples and pine trees where I live, but that did not rub me the right way at the time, right? So I want to ask,
Yes.
and this friend is coming on the show, so just be ready. I'm going to revisit that story later. So, so can we, can the two of you talk about, times in which folks kind of like did not know what you are or who you were and kind of rubbed you the wrong way? Let's go Lauren and then Castella.
I mean, for me, I think that's every day. I'm from the Dominican Republic, and whenever I meet someone and they find out that I'm Dominican, they're like, oh, but you don't look like the others. And I'm like, what do the others look like? Why do you call them the others? And, with Dominicans migrating to the U.S., you have multiple stories because we suffered from a 30-year dictatorship with Trujillo, and then you also have neoliberalism and kind of like this progress talk and privatization during the 90s that a lot of people felt that they had to migrate in order to progress and attain something in their lives. And then, there's me. I came here to the United States, not because I was running away from a dictatorship, not because I was looking to, build a business or something like that. I came here because I wanted to further my education. So with that comes a lot of privilege that not many people here in the United States, I feel, are aware of. Of course, I don't look like the others because my conditions are not like the others. Also because I don't come from the same background as them. I'm white Dominican. I am middle class, and I have a father who has a very successful business, and I am very proud of that. But, here, I guess my issue when people tell me that is that we're all pulled in the same bag.
Right.
And that's wrong. Like, I know I'm privileged, but at the same time, we have to acknowledge all of these inequalities and the processes of globalization that have pushed people in and out of certain countries.
Yeah.
But I'm going to leave it there because I also want to hear Castella's point of this.
Awesome. So kind of like connecting back to yours, I don't know, I feel kind of mixed because I am mixed, not only just in race, but also like with where I come from. So I'm black and white, thinking about racially, but thinking about my ethnicity, I'm really from like a mosh posh of places in England, like, Germany, Ireland, England. But then I'm also from like, some of my ancestors are from Sierra Leone and other places in Africa. So I often felt like people would just say, oh, well, no, you're Rican, girl, or, oh, no, you're Dominican. And I always felt like I had to pretend to be a part of a culture that like I'm not really from. And I started to internalize this, thinking like, okay, so everyone exotifies me for being like from a Latin American country or from like a Hispanic country. And like, oh my gosh, like I love the traditions, I love the culture, I love everything about it, right? But then like, and then when I go and visit there, it's like the first time I feel like, oh my gosh, like I'm home. I'm with people who we're all so mixed and together. And yet here I come back to America and everyone's just trying to put me into a box of I don't really belong anywhere, and yet I belong everywhere at the same time. So people usually exotify me saying, oh, you're that Malaysian princess, or, oh, you must be
princess?
from the Middle Eastern. Oh, no, it's the Dominican Republic. Oh, no, you must be. And it's always about everyone else's perceptions of myself, and then how can I adapt to that? Because I know I'm black and white, and I'm fine with that, but at times I have to navigate the space to understand when is it safe to talk about it, and also when will I be able to leverage that, because there'll be points where I have privilege, and then points where, well, I don't, and then that's where it kind of sucks. So it's been very mixed in and of itself.
I love that. And, you know, sometimes I get the question of, what are you? Or where do you come?
Yep.
Have you got those too, Polini? How have you answered those?
All the time. How do I answer that? The first time I ever got that question was, of course, in New London. I love New London. How you doing, New London? I love you. Anyway, so I was in New London, and I got off the bus, right? And I was told that, I mean, I wasn't told anything. The person asked for my number. Then they looked at me like with a squinty eye and everything. They were like, oh, you know, what are you? Like, are you Puerto Rican? Are you Dominican? Are you? And I was like, I am a human being. Hey, how's that? You know? But to me, it's really crazy that what that notion of exotic / tropical / what are you did to folks who were raised here. Because to my, you know, very first story, like the person who asked me that question is a Dominican man who's not white passing. You know? And I love that person. But at the same time, it's very complex that because this person grew up in the US, their perception of what is tropical and what is not tropical is very different from mine, you know, and from Lauren's, and then from Castella's as well. So how do you ladies think that your identity influence your work and like the work you do? Like, do you feel like, is there an influence? How does your identity like is reflected in the work that you do as, you know, folks who teach, who sing, who tap, who twerk, who do a little bit of everything? Castella first.
Let Castella go first.
Okay, I want to.
Whoever wants to go first. This is the Tropical Girl Show. It's messy. It's me. Go ahead.
Oh, awesome. I think for me, it's more about thinking about my identity and the intersections. I always think about intersectionality just on the low. That's my favorite theory, not just in academics, but also in real life, understanding the intersections of myself as like a woman, as a mixed person. And I can think about the sexual orientation, the language I speak, the lands that maybe my ancestors and I come from. I can think about the religion and all these different things. So when I think about it, it really shaped my sense of kind of coming to the crossroads of who I am and who I'm growing into, like who I'm continuously growing into being. And I bring that into my teaching and education work. I teach 7 and 8-year-olds during the week, and then on the weekend I teach teenagers and adults, and they all have various needs, various cognitive abilities, various kind of understandings of who they are in that moment. And I'm just trying to reach them for who they are in that moment. And I think that, you know, my understanding of identity and intersectionality has helped in a way, hopefully.
For sure.
I love that. I think that identity is present in my work because I always question representation. Who's being represented by whom and for what reasons? And I mean, yes, I'm researching Dominican male sex workers. We do know a lot of women and trans sex workers across the world, but we really don't know that much about male sex workers. So there's that. And I decided to focus on the Dominican Republic because there's a lot that we don't know about from, you know, with the voices of the people from there. Like, we do get a lot of generalizations and stereotypes. So in my work, I try to challenge that by not giving a voice, but by highlighting their own voices, by amplifying their voices, because they have a voice. I don't need to speak for them. So that's how I put identity into my work.
And my favorite question after this, because, whew, child, y'all are so inspiring. And you happen to be my friends, and you happen to be at the show. I am so lucky. Anyway, my next question is, why do you think it's relevant that we have these conversations in the U.S.? Why? Why is it important for folks to know that, you know, we have identities that we are, you know, we see ourselves in a particular way? Why is it important that folks understand that, you know, there's multiple perspectives on identity? Why do you think it's relevant for folks in this country to be talking about this?
That's
Go ahead, Lauren.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a great question, because here a lot of people talk about the United States being a melting pot and embracing every culture, but at the end of the day,
like whatever that means, right? A melting pot.
Exactly, whatever that means, and it's like a melting pot of which cultures, which cultures are you embracing, and which ones are you shaming? Because with the latest president, with Trump, sorry, that was the previous one.
Whoever that was.
We didn't see a lot of embracing. We didn't see a lot of acceptance, and people were okay with that. People were not surprised. So I'm like, okay, so you are claiming this, but in reality, you're not that. And then also you're shaming other countries that are not accepting refugees, or that are not accepting LGBTQ plus people. But really, these issues are also happening in our own backyards, and many people are not doing anything to combat that. So those are my 2 cents on that.
2 tropical cents, you mean? Castella.
Yes.
Well, when I think about these conversations, and I've been blessed to have the opportunity to talk with a lot of different people, and I see that it either results in like kind of you get to grow yourself and become a better person, like maybe morally, internally, and externally, but also when the absence of these conversations perpetuates or continues violence in our society.
Right.
And I've seen that from kids from a young age all the way into adulthood. So by not having these conversations, kind of going back to your point, Lauren, about like, well, who's represented? How are we really talking about this? It perpetuates that notion of like, oh, well, this is acceptable. Right? Like, oh, well, then that means like we can continue the violence. We can continue to disconnect with one another. We have all this technology, all this great stuff like Zoom and computers and phones, and we're so connected, yet we're disconnected, and all these things keep coming and happening. So I think that knowledge is not only power, but it's a way that it's a tool that we can use to empathize with one another more. And I think that that's essential as we move forward. We have to have empathy. Even though we're all tropical girls here, we have a different understanding of what tropical means to each and every one of us. And I think it's beautiful that we can come together and have these conversations, because more of this needs to happen. More agreeing and more disagreeing. Because I tell my students all the time, I'm like, you can disagree with me. I can still be your friend. We can still get through this together by having what's called civil discourse. And not enough of that's going on. And like, if I disagreed with Lauren, like, it won't be the end of the world. It just means we have different perspectives, different opinions and understandings. And that's okay, because that's what diversity is.
Thank you.
Different. So like, that's just like my couple cents on that.
Thank you. You see, you just tuned into Tropical Church and you did not know that. Hallelujah. Amen. Thank you. You see, I am very much on the same page, and when we have these conversations, but fun fact, Lauren and Castella were never put in conversation. This is the first time they're meeting each other. Yes. My other question that sort of like emerged as we were talking about that, how does masculinity and men play a role in that whole tropical diversity, exotic, oh my gosh, bananas, watermelons, and little dance, a little samba? How do you think masculinity can either support those sort of like, exotifications and whatnot, or, I don't know, what do you think masculinity can do for it? I'm not gonna ask anything. I'm just gonna, toss the ball over to y'all. Castella, you first. The role of masculinity in defining what is tropical and what isn't.
I really think it comes down to how, not only the male gaze, but then having a Black, Indigenous, people of color gaze kind of fits into that. Whether it's the tropical male gaze, how is that gaze either sexualized, saying like, oh, I see woman as property, or woman as kind of something that is more sexual, versus seeing them as human or seeing them as an equal. And I see that mindset, I'm constantly rubbing up against this, not only as an educator, but as someone who's like getting deeper to higher education. There's this constant kind of boundary of like hyper masculinity of like, oh, I have to perform, I have to be the best no matter what, like I'm gonna beat all my competitors and all this stuff. And it's like, dude, chill. Like, in order to be able to kind of deconstruct or decolonize our minds from this toxic masculinity that's like kind of perpetuating all these oppressions, we really need to take a step back and see, well, what are we teaching our children? Are we showing them positive examples of masculinity? Like, look at the superheroes. How do they fight things? with violence. How do they, like, what are their role models? Like, you know, it really starts from a young age, and we gotta start there.
Hi,
I completely agree.
Lauren.
Yes, that's an excellent question. I mean, masculinity and men in, you know, this idea of consuming tropical identities, objectifying women, objectifying the land, and, you know, exotifying everything and everyone around them. I feel that's something that we need to talk about, because men are both object and subject of that. And yes, we're talking about men as, you know, this uniform population, but within that, you know, it's a conversation of race. It's a conversation of sexuality too, because again, not all men participate in the same way.
Yep.
Constructing masculinity and constructing you know, the patriarchal structures that are placed in tropical societies. So there's that. And, you know, there's also this whole idea of the Latin lover.
Right.
Who's the Latin lover? You know, it's a fit man, a tan or dark-skinned man that, you know, from the foreigner's perspective is powerful. But from the local's perspective, it's not that powerful, because we all know that us in Latin America and the Caribbean, we don't like dark people because of, you know, that, again, history of colonization and globalization. Yep. So there's something there. It's, you know, men are part of that construction. They're part of the problem, and instead of challenging it, the majority of them decide to still take part in that, to climb the pyramid, for example, by shaming and by just putting other people down in order to make themselves look grander in the eyes of others. So yeah, that's a complex question. Thank you for bringing that up, because, you know, it's
and to me it's like, you know, oh, these three girls are scholars, right? They're scholars. Oh my gosh, and they keep this, but this is not a conversation that only scholars should be having.
No,
right? It's really a conversation that everyone should be having, right?
Yes.
I'm chatting with my mom oftentimes, and she'll be like, oh, okay, there's this family issue, introduce, like, you know, sharing like family stories, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's race, oh my gosh, there's class, oh my gosh, there's gender, you know. So you have this triad of things that really influences how we operate, you know, how we, you know, on a daily basis, not just like in college, right? Just every single day, right? You go somewhere and someone says something to you that, like, you know, rubs you the wrong way, and you're like, I don't know why, but that did not land right with me. You know what I'm saying? Like that whole, what are you? You know, and guys kind of like, you know, complimenting you and treating you in a particular way that doesn't feel right. You know, so if that's happening to you, I mean, that's happening to women everywhere, right? It's not just inside of the academy. That's why, you know, at the Tropical Girl Show, we also open space for these conversations, you know, because you can't just live at the beach every day doing the samba, you know what I'm saying? And that's everywhere. Like, even when you look at, you know, for example, I'm a really huge Cardi B fan, you know that, you'll know that. If you didn't know, you'll know. One day, maybe she'll come on the show and I'm gonna literally pass out.
Please.
So, anyway, if that happens, you know,
if you pass out, I'll cover for you.
So if that ever happens, you know, like when she sings, right, and she talks about the money and securing her bag and all those things, folks might not take it seriously because it's being presented in a particular way, right? But at the same time, there's a lot of truth. And, you know, talking about, you know, how women, you know, need to be independent because society is problematic and whatnot. So I say all of that to say that we don't really need to use like academic terminology, right? You don't need to know what decolonization is, right? You can just go by how is it that you feel when you are, you know, for example, being exotified by someone on the streets. And speaking of exotified and exotification, how do you girls define exotification? Let's see, you know, what it means to like all of us differently. So what is exotification to you, Castella? Exotic.
Usually when I think about exotic, I know tropical comes to mind, which is kind of sad, but also like when I think of exotic, I think of it's another way of othering people. So every time I hear someone saying like, "Oh, it's so exotic or exquisite," or I've been called a gypsy before, and I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like I have nothing against the people. It's just a lot of people's perceptions tend to other people and tend to be unintentionally offensive. So this is where I kind of think of intent versus impact, where people might be using the term exotic, like saying you're exotic, as a compliment, and their intentions are like, oh, like I have good intentions, I want to like give you a compliment, but I'm impacted like, whoa, like that's not cool, like that's not representing
Everyone means well.
right. And yeah, it's kind of performative, right?
Yes.
So that's just my thoughts on it.
Lauren?
Yes. I completely agree with Castella. I think it's another way for people to, you know, engage in othering cultures. And I also feel like people use it as a safe word when they don't really, when they can't really place you, when they don't want to be offensive, but they still want to point out that you are different, or that you don't belong, or that you're not like, you know, the others, to quote what we've all been said in our lives. But yeah, it's I feel like when I was growing up, I would hear objects being called exotic because they would come from faraway countries. I never heard someone refer to a person as exotic until I came here to the United States. I'm like,
Yep.
what is it? And I feel like the reason for that existing here right now is because most Americans are so used to categorize everything on their own rules. Like when I tell people I'm white in the Dominican Republic, they're like, no, you're brown. And I'm like, listen to me. Listen, Susan. You don't know what has been going on down there.
Yep.
And that is very, very important because you have a lot of people that, you know, again, in my case, I have certain privileges back home that I don't have right here. So, you know, I have to navigate those systems, and I could challenge them. I could, but in a way, it'd be easier for me to conform to some of that to make my life easier. Like I can always go back. I know many people don't have the option. I can always go back to my country and I can always feel safe with my family and all that, but other people don't. So I feel like by navigating both systems, I can understand that better, and I can be an ally to others, and I can also help them navigate some of these systems, especially for international students here at UConn. Or I've had friends that have come from Puerto Rico that, although it's a territory of the US, you might be surprised at how different the cultures are between both geographies. So yeah.
Dang. Whew. That was intense. That was intense. Thank you both for, you know, sharing. Because I know that's like really personal, you know, to us, right? Those are really personal stories, and I want to be sure that I honor them. So what do you think, how would you like to be seen? How would you like, you know, for folks to approach you? Like, how would you like to be treated? You know, because I feel like people talk about, you go to so many panels and people be like dropping those big names, but how would you really like to be treated, addressed? You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to hear from you, because I'll talk about how I want to be treated, and y'all better know. Lauren.
I would like to be treated with respect. That's one thing. Yes, I can be approachable. Yes, I can share parts of my life with you, but that doesn't give you the right to call me mommy, for example.
Mommy.
That doesn't give you the right to call me or salivate whenever I'm walking down the street. No, it also doesn't give you the right to question my ideas whenever you feel like I'm not qualified. Whenever you feel that my education is not the best, is not academic enough, or whatever you want to mean by that. Especially, you know, in the classroom, I've been a TA before, and it's tough out there with white students. Like it's tough. It takes a lot of emotional energy from you, because again, you don't want to be the one challenging everything, but you also don't want to be the one that, you know, lets everyone get away with everything. But you know, that's something completely a part of it. Yeah, I want to be treated with respect, I want to be heard, and I want for people to try to make conversation with me, not asking me to translate something for them, but, you know, based on shared interests, or, you know, actual curiosity of knowing who I am, not the place I come from. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. RESPECT, Castella.
I kind of agree with what you're saying, Lauren, about like, you know, not questioning someone for like who they are, essentially. And my biggest thing is listen to understand the different perspective. We all have such different perspectives and intersections. I talk with other mixed people who are black and white, and it's completely different. Like, you know,
right?
Like it's just, there's so much beauty to all the diversity. So please listen to understand, and listen with empathy. Not like,
Yes.
oh my gosh, it must be so hard for your life.
Oh,
and it's like, no, like I didn't ask for sympathy. It's very similar sounding to empathy, but empathy is I'm going to maybe have like this whole metaphor or this whole thing, like hypothetical situation where I'm going to place myself in your shoes and imagine what it must be like. And trying to have these experiences where it's like, okay, like I'm gonna try to understand who not only who you want to be and who you are, but from a place of compassion, and say, okay, like I might not understand this as like a white person, or even as a black person, or even as a Latinx person, or a queer person, or a insert any identity here person, and yet we need to come together and have these courageous conversations and truly listen. So I wish and hope that more people will do that, because I find that as an educator, a lot of the time people are like, what's the right answer? I need to get the right response. Like, give me the A.
The pressure,
I want the
right?
A+.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's earned. Just like trust, just like grades, everything here is earned. So.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. That's amazing. And like the same goes to me, right? I want to be able to wear my crazy clothes, you know what I'm saying? My patterns, you know what I'm saying? My bikinis, you know what I'm saying? My crazy collars and whatnot, you know what I'm saying? And I too want respect, right? I too want to be considered, and I too want to be taken seriously, even when I'm joking. Because in me, joking, oftentimes I'm saying very serious things about myself that I'd like for you to listen to. You know, and same way, it goes both ways, right? The same way I want respect and I want to be taken seriously, I will do the same for you. I promise you, my pinky promising you that's, you know, a good way to go, respect. Ladies, we're almost, you know, we're getting to the end here, and I want to ask one last question. So what is your advice to all the little tropical girls out there growing up and going through stuff, right? For example, what Lauren and Castella, so what you wish that younger versions of y'all knew back when you were growing up and going through challenges because you're mixed and exotic and tropical? Lauren first and then Castella.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that the other day. So yeah, I'm kind of prepped for this. My advice to my younger self is not to spread myself too thin. I feel like I've always worked hard for everything that I have. And though that's good, I also realize that I don't have a lot of social experiences. You know, whatever you want to make of that. So yeah, just take it easy, try to have a conversation, and don't try to fit where you're not welcomed, or don't be with toxic people or in toxic situations. I feel like that's the most proper way that I could put it without giving names away.
Thank you. Thank you. Castella?
And to add on to that, I think for me is just to give myself more grace, because I know I'm kind of like a workaholic too, where I just kind of constantly going, and there's a like internal pressure, and I internalized that as a younger tropical girl, and I think I would go back and tell myself like it's okay to say no, it's okay to just take a day and relax, it's okay to say yes to your friends instead of going out to homework.
Right.
You know, so I would suggest give yourself some time and grace, and talk to people who are like you, who are not like you, and find that best friend. And even if that best friend changes from time to time, I think I had like a lot of different best friends growing up, but we got so much out of our conversations as friends, and it's okay to kind of move on, because friendships and relationships kind of swell out and in, just like the tide. So I think that giving yourself that space to explore who you are and who you want to be, and give yourself that grace and that time, would truly be essential.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for sharing. Like that was another beautiful, vulnerable moment. I appreciate you so much for, trusting the show and this platform. So my thing would be for my younger self was, you're doing great, sweetie. No, that's not it. So my thing would actually be, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. It's just a moment. It's gonna pass, and you're gonna be okay. Just, you're beautiful, you're Black, you're just a kid. It's gonna be okay, and you're gonna be fabulous. Anyway, ladies, thank you so much for being here at the Tropical Show today. My heart is really full. I'm very thankful for both of you in my life. And now, thank you for both of you sharing with our watchers, who will get to know you and your stories and where you're coming from. Thank you so much. I love you both. And come back always to the Tropical Girl Show, where it's always sunny. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for having us.
No problem.
Thank you.
And please call if Cardi B is on the show next time.
My gosh.
Yes.
Of course. Oh, by the way, Ron, never mind. By the way, sorry. These girls are they're so approachable, and it's just, you can tell that I'm discombobulated because, when it gets really emotional like that, as a tropical girl, I had to really, build up and really defend myself. So when it gets really emotional like that, you're gonna see me a little discombobulated, but I tell you what though, relatable, right? So that was another wonderful show, and I'm very happy you were here with us today. I'm very happy you were watching. I cannot wait to communicate with you outside of the show. We also have an Instagram. It's Tropical Girl Show. Very original. You can find me there. And, to revisit the quote that we started the show with, it was, a Cardi B quote, and she was talking about, folks telling her that she cannot do it. She cannot do it. The minute she hears, she cannot do it, that's when she really gathers, the strength and the courage to do it and prove folks wrong. And oftentimes, exotic girls, tropical girls, Black girls, girls of color, trans, queer folks, we're oftentimes told that we cannot do it, right? And that's exactly when we have to, find support and find our community to prove them wrong. Anyhow, that was a Tropical Girl Show. Thank you so much for being here with us. And I'm off. I'm going to the beach. Anyway, cut.